Hey, I'm Fred.
And I'm Ant.
And this is Creator Generation.
Create a generation of hype.
All right, Frederico, what is happening this week?
This week we're chatting with Ryan John, who was a very successful radio presenter, but decided to move into Facebook and YouTube and has done pretty well.
I mean, YouTube, if nothing else, has taught us that people want to know the real people and get to know you personally and be relatable and be a human.
Just a quick note, this is a cut-down version of this interview. If you want to check out the whole podcast, head on over to your favourite podcast platform like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and you can check it out there. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Creator Generation. This week we are joined by Ryan John. Ryan, welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys. Pleasure to be on. And can I just start with like an asterisk?
No. Well, this whole year, 2020, is an asterisk. So let's hear it. What's your asterisk?
Well, my asterisk is that I love listening to the podcast and doing your courses, and I feel like I should be someone who's listening to it rather than talking on it and giving advice, if that makes sense. I feel a bit out of my depth, and then I'm still in the learning phase.
Well, the good thing is we do mention in the description, I'm sure somewhere, that we're about learning about people's successes and failures.
I'm not saying I'm a failure. I'm just saying I'm learning. I'm just starting.
You are learning. I think, and we should probably explain who you are, and you can introduce yourself, and let's see how.
Well, I was actually an accountant, as we were talking about off air, for a little bit, and I did a bit of radio and stuff on the side. And then the radio on the side turned into doing radio full-time, breakfast radio with the Hit Network around the country in Perth and Canberra. And I think I was in Perth when I first met you guys. And then, as the world sort of shifted to video and online, I sort of did as well. And sort of as radio went from a side hustle to the main gig, then radio kind of became that main job, but video was my side gig. And then I've stopped doing radio at the moment and just sort of full-time YouTube and video making at the moment.
Cool. And how do you go from being an accountant to someone on the radio?
Well, this is like the nerdiest thing to say, but I was sort of like the class clown of the accounting firm, which is like the weirdest thing to say. But I was definitely the one. I worked at NAB, one of the big four banks, and then at Pitcher Partners, which was a big firm. And, I was always coming into work and being like, oh my God, you'll never guess what happened on the train. And I remember my boss at Pitcher Partners said, Ryan, if you want to, tell slapstick stories for a living, you should go and get a radio job because here's not the place for it. And so you could imagine, and he was a bit of a stiff. Everyone else was really nice. And so you can imagine the pride and smugness when literally like 5 weeks later, I had my piece of paper. Let's pretend it was this Caseify wrapper. And I walked in, I was like, hey, remember how a month ago you said I should go get a radio job? Well, guess what? I got one. Here's my letter of resignation. I'm out. And it felt very nice. But having said that, I did speak to HR and said, spoke to them and they said, look, you're young and at the time single, no mortgage, no children. I've got nothing to lose. And they're like, if you want to go and try some radio stuff and come back, like just give us a call if you want your job back. And I'm still every day just crossing my fingers that it's not going to be the day where I have to call them back and beg for my job back.
Get the abacus back out. And
yeah.
That's my uncle is still in radio. He's been in radio his whole life almost, and he was aspiring to be in radio. And Mum tells the story that he, as a kid, would practice his radio voice at night, and he's got a phenomenal radio voice like that. Were you practicing your radio voice before you got into radio?
I was on air for many years, and I still don't have one. I think hopefully that's over. That's done. I mean, YouTube, if nothing else, has taught us that people want to know the real people and get to know you personally and be relatable and be a human, really. And I work with a few podcasters and stuff now, and I always say, like, when in doubt, just be a human. So I still don't have that big radio voice, although a lot of content directors would often tell me that I need to lift my energy, get a bit more up. But I'm naturally, a bit more calm than they would like. But again, the commercial radio standards of energy is pretty high. So my low energy for them is probably more than enough for the regular person, I would have thought.
Interesting. And how's the start of you're an established content creator on YouTube. You've been around for a little while. And how's that going now that you're able to give more time to it?
It's really awesome. Actually, the biggest change is I've actually taught myself how to shoot and edit, which seems really obvious to, the creator generation community. But in radio, you've got a digital guy. And sometimes if you want to make a video, you have to see if he's available and has he got time to edit it. And it's actually, liberating seems a bit over the top of a word to use, but to be able to go film yourself, edit it this afternoon and put it online tonight is just so freeing. It feels great that you can just do stuff. So I'm really enjoying that. And I guess I haven't really carved out a niche per se, but I think everything's just based on sort of storytelling. And for instance, there was a guy the other day who was a bit down on his luck. He had some brain cancer, some troubles, and he decided he was going to set up a little cafe on the front lawn of his house and just make free coffees for everyone because he thought everyone deserved to have something good happen in their day because Victoria's having a rough one. I was like, what a legend. So I just grabbed the camera, went down, shot it. And like I said, it was up that night. And then the following night, my footage was on Channel 7 and Channel 9 in the Ballarat local news or whatever. And it just felt really nice to be able to go shoot a story, spread a positive message. And, because it did a couple of 100,000 views to kind of get paid for it. Like, it's sort of strange. And even though I, in my mind, am a new YouTuber or new to the game, when people realize that's the only job I have and we're financially doing okay, people are like, oh my God, that's all I can dream about. So it's sort of, you got to remind yourself how good you've got it, I guess.
There's a couple of different tangents I want to go with that, but I'll go with the one that first came to mind is like, you're sort of coming from accountant then to radio. So let's start with the radio. But the traditional media to social video and social media and stuff, and then, transferring in and out of those traditional worlds. Do you see this traditional landscape looking at online talent and being able to work with them yet?
I think they can, but I don't think you would. Like, I was talking to a manager, actually not a manager, this other guy, and he said, there was a chance to do this thing with Spotify, right? A podcast thing. And they said, if it goes really well, then we might be able to get you a radio job. And I was like, if Spotify's going well, why the hell would I want to be on radio for? And I've spoken to a lot of people about that YouTube used to be this, if I go really well on YouTube, then I could get into TV. And I'm like, why on earth would you want to be on TV if you're doing well on YouTube? It just, and I think people are figuring that out. And I think Casey Neistat was the original one who said, no, the goal isn't to move from YouTube to TV to movies. The goal is to go from YouTube to better YouTube and cooler YouTube. Because I don't know anyone who watches TV on free-to-air and likes it. I don't know many people that listen to radio, but I know lots of people that listen to podcasts and watch YouTubers. So why would you not just keep making that? I think, and I'm guilty of this. Sometimes I feel like I need to have Hit 92.9 behind me to make me feel like I'm legitimate. I work for a legitimate brand that people know, and that makes me real. Sitting here in my bedroom, I'm just some guy in his bedroom, but you don't need a brand or a corporation to make you a legitimate creator. If you press publish, then you're creating. And like I said, I have battles with that myself, going, I'm not really the real deal until I'm doing it from somewhere cool, but I don't know, you get to those big companies and you go, geez, how good would it be to live in the Grampians and work by yourself? So it's a catch-22. So my advice would be, if you're doing really well in new media, why would you go backwards? It's like getting a job at Netflix to get experience so you could move to Blockbuster. It doesn't make sense.
Cool. Hey, I want to ask, obviously you have a business financial background.
Yep.
And obviously you're a creator now, so that gives you a little bit more insight into the business side of content creation. I mean, we know a lot of creators who, they grow really big and then they get undone by the fact that they don't understand like the business side of things. So they can only grow so far because, their business starts to grow and they start to get more brand deals and then they sort of flounder because they don't understand accounting. How do you feel, one, about having that experience?
Well, first of all, I actually don't like when people just clump together and say the business side, because there's so many different aspects of the business side that you might know some of them and not the others. And I don't pretend to know all of them. But yeah, it's weird. And I think the main thing for me is, having worked in like consulting and having clients and stuff, is just sort of thinking, well, what's in it for them? So when people say, oh, my podcast has this many listens, my YouTube has this many views, brand, give me money, please. And it's about how many views they have and they want the money. Oh, I'm entitled to it because I heard on this YouTuber podcast that when you get this many views, you can make this much money. And you say, yeah, but what's in it for the brand? And they're like, what do you mean? And I think just being able to look at it from their perspective and going, well, what's in it for them? This is what they want. They want to sell T-shirts. Do people that listen to your podcast or watch your YouTube channel, do they like wearing T-shirts? Because if they don't, then it doesn't matter how many views you have. So just, I guess, being aware of, those sort of marketing fundamentals, not to market your podcast, but to kind of be a bit of an advocate for the brands that you're working with. Because if you've got 1 million people who are only interested in one thing, then trying to sell them something else is kind of irrelevant. So just being aware of that and thinking, how can I help this brand? It just really opens up the conversations and makes you a lot more valuable rather than just saying, I've got this many views, money please. It seems, I hate using the word entitled because I feel like it gets said a lot when discussing young people, but it just, you're probably worth the money to someone, but you got to think about why. And I think just having that mindset can really just open up your thinking and make yourself really valuable and perhaps make the money that you need to help get yourself by.
Yeah, I was actually had a note to ask you about brand deals because, like, you're active on, and I want to dive into that in a second too. You're active on a whole bunch of different platforms.
Which is a blessing and a curse, I might say, because I've read so many places that are like, just do really well at 1 or 2 of them instead of being kind of okay at 4 or 5 of them, and like, and I'm a victim of that problem.
But I find it interesting. Like, what I wanted to ask is, like, you're doing from like the vanity metric side of things. Like, you've got decent channels. They're not like stratospheric. Like, your Instagram's like a bit over 35,000 ish or something like that. But you seem to have quite consistent and quite savvy brand deals. Like, what is it? What's your secret sauce there? Or like, why are you so brand savvy, or how does that come about?
Well, I'll take that as a compliment because I wouldn't consider myself brand savvy. I'm still figuring that out. But I think what we were talking about before, just sort of being aware of who your audience is. And so a lot of my stuff on YouTube and in general really has been about the fact that I was adopted and have a pretty cool story that I did an ancestry DNA test and I found my birth father, and I've got all these other family members on the other side of the world, which is really cool. And I had a big spike in followers from people who are also adopted or are into genealogy, or however you say the thing when you're into family trees and whatever.
Yeah, little blue people that live in bottles. I'm down with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but so I knew that my audience was into that sort of stuff. So when I was speaking to Ancestry, I was sort of said, well, look, you can buy a TV ad and reach 50,000 people and hope 5,000 are into it. Or you can work with me who might get 20,000 views, but 19,000 of the 20,000 views are really into this stuff. That's a pretty good starting place. And to think of, what's in it for them. So I think being able to create content for the brand instead of just slapping the brand on it is a strength of the new generation, which I'm sort of trying to embrace.
Hey, speaking of you mentioned that you're sort of across a whole bunch of platforms. I kind of wanted to go through the list of social platforms and see what ones you're on and what do you do on them. So you got YouTube, right? So what do you do on YouTube?
Well, a lot of my videos, the sort of story ones, are between 3 and 6 minutes, say. Some get to about 10 minutes, but I was trying to invent in my mind this like little sweet spot where it could work on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram TV. And obviously I might change the shape and I might have subtitles on Facebook, but not YouTube, but essentially it would be the same video. I don't know if that's a good idea because you could just be doing all 3 of them okay instead of doing one of them really well. But so YouTube is basically, I don't know, very loosely, I would just say storytelling and vlog type material. And from about sort of 3 to 6 minutes-ish, I reckon. So that's YouTube.
Okay. Instagram in the feed?
In the feed, some fun photos, bit of life stuff. Again, I might do an Instagram TV video, which is a few minutes long, or even if it's like a screenshot of the YouTube video, like a thumbnail type thing to say there's a new video out. But one thing I am wary of is I don't want to use any platform to promote another one. I feel like you need to respect the platform you're on. So if I do something on Instagram, it needs to work for Instagram. If you do something on Facebook, it needs to work on Facebook. I don't want to, just become a place that sends you to another place. But yeah, Instagram's a bit of a mismatch. And I actually like Reels. I actually like watching Reels. And as you can imagine, thinking of a 15-second video is a lot easier than thinking of a 5-minute one and producing it. So I'm kind of tempted by the easy win and the easy validation that some Instagram Reel likes will get you.
Interesting. What about TikTok then? Are you on TikTok or is it?
I am. I am TikTok, but I haven't been for the last few months. And I was actually talking to someone this yesterday. I kind of am a victim of fake news because I was scared that the US was going to have it banned or blocked or whatever. And then I thought, well, if the US is blocked, is that sort of it? Like, is any social media strong enough to survive in the Western world without the US? So I kind of got a bit, don't waste your time on that. It's on the way out, but it seems to have survived. But I actually love watching it. I love watching TikTok more than any other platform probably because it's quick, it's fun, it's creative. And what I think is exciting about it is if you've got 12-year-olds thinking about transitions and how to tell a story quick and what's the funny thing at the end and how do I do this funny effect, can you imagine when these people in 20 years have got 20 years experience of filmmaking, how awesome movies and YouTube's going to be when they're older? I just think that's real exciting. So I think that's cool.
It's a really, really good point.
Because I didn't know what a transition was like 18 months ago. I'm in my 30s, and so the fact that these kids are going to have 5 years filmmaking experience when they finish high school is just ludicrous. So yeah, exciting times ahead, I reckon.
Hey, Ryan, I'm getting the tap on the shoulder that we've used up our time. So as a very, very keen listener, you would know the next question. Like, what are your top tips for emerging creators?
Whether it's brand deals or whether it's just a piece of content, what's in it for them? So what's in it for the brand or what's in it for the viewer? If someone's going to spend 2, 3, 10 minutes watching your video, what's in it for them? And just hoping that they think you're funny is probably high risk, as you'd probably advise a lot of new YouTubers if they're within a niche or they're giving some information that's valuable or teaching you something. That's really strong. So just being aware of, what's in it for them. And that's probably with everything in life, really. What's in it for the other person? And if you can sort of appease that, then that's a really good place to start. And I think just from a technical point of view, and this doesn't matter if it's a podcast, a radio break, a video, have a really strong start to your story. People don't have the attention to wait 2 minutes to figure out what you're on about. Give me something juicy in the hook. Give me something cool. Make me interested. Make me care. If there's something in it for me, let me know what that is straight away. So then I'll decide to keep watching. And I think the amount of great videos that has great stuff in the last few minutes that never get seen is a real shame. So when you're planning your story or whatever it is, just have something fun and interesting at the start. And I'm sure that's not new to you guys, but does that seem correct to have your audience here?
Yeah. That's really good advice. Ryan, you escaped my 2 first name derision as well of not trusting you, but we trust you because you have 2 first names.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
But Ryan, John, thanks so much for hanging out with us. It's been fun.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm in lockdown. It's just nice to talk to another human.
Thanks, mate.
Create a generation. Look on the mic.